Yo, 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 your boy's back with the most devastating analysis in hip-hop history.
Any bitch that talk to him and they in love, just make sure you hide your little sister from him.
Oh my God!
His career's over. I love him, but it might be done.
You remember when you had fun? Y'all wanted to dance, right?
And I'm not playing with y'all today. What we're about to break down is the most surgical exposure of a fraud that the music industry has ever witnessed. Drake, the Sixth God, Champagne Papi, the man who dominated the charts for 15 years straight. But here's the truth that real hip-hop heads have been saying since day one. Drake was never really one of us. He was always an outsider, a tourist in hip-hop culture. And Kendrick Lamar's Not Like Us finally exposed him to the world. Let me tell you something right now. I've been studying hip-hop for years, and real heads have always known Drake was phony. But he had this massive fan base of people who didn't understand hip-hop culture. People who thought hip-hop was just about catchy hooks and streaming numbers. And Drake exploited that. He built an empire on fooling people who didn't know any better. But Kendrick's Not Like Us changed everything. It didn't just win a rap battle, it exposed Drake to his own fan base. It made casual fans realize what real hip-hop heads have been saying for years. Drake is not authentic. He's not really part of this culture. He's a culture vulture who got rich off of appropriating hip-hop. If you're ready to witness how one song exposed the biggest fraud in hip-hop history and turned his own fans against him, we about to break down how Kendrick destroyed the illusion. We talking about the real hip-hop perspective, the cultural gatekeeping that Drake could never pass, and how Not Like Us finally made the mainstream understand what the streets always knew. Now, before we get into the absolute devastation, let me set the stage for y'all with the real story. Drake wasn't just some rapper who came up through the culture. He was a child actor from Canada who decided to become a rapper. And real hip-hop heads never forgot that. From 2009, when Drake first came on the scene, the real hip-hop community was skeptical. This was a light-skinned kid from Toronto who grew up middle class, went to a performing arts school, and was on a teen drama called Degrassi. That's not a hip-hop background. That's not the culture. But here's what Drake did that was genius from a business perspective, but fraudulent from a cultural perspective. He studied hip-hop like it was a formula. He figured out what was popular in different regions and he copied it. He took Houston sound, he took Atlanta sound, he took Toronto sound, he took Jamaican dancehall, he took UK grime. He was a culture vulture from day one. And real hip-hop heads were calling it out. Underground artists, conscious rappers, street rappers, they all saw through it. They knew Drake was fake. But the problem was, Drake had something they didn't have. He had the machine behind him. He had Universal Music Group, the biggest music company in the world, pushing him. Drake had the best producers, the best writers, the best marketing team. And most importantly, he had access to mainstream audiences who didn't understand hip-hop culture. People who thought hip-hop was just about catchy melodies and relatable lyrics. People who didn't care about authenticity or street credibility or cultural contribution. And that's how Drake built his empire. Not by earning respect from real hip-hop heads, but by appealing to people who didn't know the difference. Soccer moms, suburban kids, pop music fans. These were Drake's real audience. Not the streets, not the culture, not the people who built hip-hop. Drake had 13 #1 albums. 13. But ask yourself, how many of those albums are considered classics by real hip-hop heads? How many of those albums changed the culture? How many of those albums will be remembered in 20 years as essential hip-hop? None. Because Drake was never making hip-hop for hip-hop fans. He was making pop music with hip-hop aesthetics. He spent over 600 weeks in the Billboard Hot 100. He broke Michael Jackson's records. He broke the Beatles' records. But those are pop metrics. Those are commercial metrics. They don't measure cultural impact. They don't measure authenticity. They don't measure whether the culture respects you. And here's the thing that real hip-hop heads always knew. Drake's collaborations weren't about artistic chemistry, they were about exploitation. When Drake worked with the regional artist, he wasn't celebrating their culture, he was stealing their sound. He'd work with Atlanta artists and suddenly he's doing Atlanta flows. He'd work with UK artists and suddenly he's doing grime. He was a chameleon with no identity of his own. His cultural influence was manufactured. When Drake wore a brand, it blew up because he had the machine behind him, not because he was organically connected to the culture. When he said a phrase, it became mainstream because of marketing, not because the streets were saying it. Everything about Drake.
Cali flow is crazy.
Oh, this some real West Coast coming together shit. I love to see it.
Certified boogeyman, I'm the one that helped to school with him.
Certified boogeyman. Quit playing.
Yeah, he's being the boogeyman right
Watching.
Real hip-hop heads were saying this for years. Pusha T tried to expose him in 2018 with the story of Adidon. He revealed Drake's secret child, he exposed the ghostwriting, he showed the blackface photo, and real hip-hop heads were like, finally, somebody's calling out this fraud. But here's what happened. Drake's casual fan base didn't care. They didn't understand why ghostwriting was a problem in hip-hop. They didn't understand why hiding your child was culturally significant. They didn't understand why the blackface photo was offensive, because they weren't part of hip-hop culture. So Drake survived Pusha T, not because he won the beef, but because his fan base was too ignorant to understand that he had been exposed. They still streamed his music, they still bought his albums, they still went to his concerts. The machine protected him by keeping his casual fans in the dark. Scorpion dropped 2 months after the story of Adidon, and it did 732,000 first week. But real hip-hop heads weren't buying it. That was soccer moms and suburban kids who didn't understand the culture. Drake's commercial success was proof that he wasn't making music for real hip-hop fans. His tour that year grossed $79 million. But look at who was at those shows. It wasn't the streets. It wasn't the culture. It was casual fans who thought Drake was hip-hop because that's what the radio told them. That's what Spotify told them. That's what the machine told them. Fast forward to 2024 and Drake is still fooling people. Her Loss with 21 Savage went #1. For All the Dogs went #1. But real hip-hop heads weren't checking for it. They knew Drake was phony. They knew he was a culture vulture. But the casual fans still didn't get it. But then Kendrick drops Not Like Us on May 4th, 2024, and everything changes. Not just for real hip-hop heads who already knew, but for Drake's own fan base. Kendrick didn't just expose Drake to the culture, he exposed Drake to the world. And that's what made it devastating. Here's why Not Like Us hit different than anything Pusha T did.
And Baka got a weird case, why is he around? Certified lover boys, certified pedophiles.
Certified lover boy, certified what?
Certified pedophiles.
Certified pedophiles is crazy.
Bro, he's coming crazy with that pedophile.
Bro, that's what I'm saying. He is stepping on this nigga face.
Boy, I want to crip walk so damn bad.
Kendrick made it simple. He made it so clear, so undeniable, so obvious that even casual fans who didn't understand hip-hop culture could see that Drake was fake. Pusha T's diss was complex. It required you to understand hip-hop history, to understand cultural context, to understand why certain things mattered. But Not Like Us was direct. The title itself said it all. Drake is not like us. He's not part of this culture. He's an outsider. And Kendrick said it over a beat that was so authentically West Coast, so undeniably hip-hop, that you couldn't miss the point. Kendrick called Drake a colonizer. He called him a culture vulture. He said Drake was not a colleague, he's a colonizer. And for the first time, casual fans started asking questions. Wait, what does that mean? Is Drake really not part of hip-hop culture? Have we been fooled? And the answer that real hip-hop heads had been screaming for 15 years finally got through. Yes, you've been fooled. Drake is not authentic. He's not really part of this culture. He's a tourist who got rich off of appropriating hip-hop. The cultural shift was immediate because Kendrick didn't just convince hip-hop heads, he convinced Drake's own fans. People who had been defending Drake for years suddenly realized they had been supporting a fraud. And that realization was devastating. Industry insiders who had been silent for years started talking. Producers who had worked with Drake started admitting that he didn't write his own lyrics. Artists who had collaborated with him started distancing themselves. The whole facade started crumbling. One music executive told a major publication, and I'm paraphrasing, that the industry had been protecting Drake for years. They knew he wasn't authentic. They knew he was using ghostwriters. They knew he was appropriating culture. But he was making them too much money to expose him, until Kendrick did it for them. And here's the devastating part. Drake couldn't respond the way he responded to Pusha T, because Not Like Us wasn't attacking his personal life, it was attacking his authenticity. And you can't defend yourself against the truth. Drake couldn't drop a track saying, "Actually, I am authentic," because everybody could see that he wasn't. Real hip-hop heads were celebrating. Finally, the mainstream was catching up to what they had known all along.
How many stocks do I really have in stock? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plus 5.
Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plus 5?
This is 5 disses, right? He's got another 5.
I'm gonna keep dropping and dropping and dropping on you before you can even process this and respond. I'm back with another diss track.
And here's the devastating part for Drake. Every single day that Not Like Us dominated culture, it was educating more people. Every meme, every reference, every time someone played it, it was a reminder that Drake had been lying, that he was never really part of hip-hop culture. This is something that has never happened in hip-hop history. Diss tracks usually stay within the culture, but Not Like Us educated mainstream audiences about hip-hop culture, and in doing so, it exposed Drake to people who had been defending him. Now let's talk about the career implications, because this is where it gets devastating. Watch how Not Like Us systematically destroyed every pillar of Drake's fraudulent empire. First, let's talk about industry relationships. Drake built his career on collaborations with real hip-hop artists. He would work with street rappers, regional artists, underground legends, and he would steal their credibility. He would use their authenticity to cover up his own fakeness. But after Not Like Us, real hip-hop artists started refusing to work with him. Not quietly, not behind the scenes, publicly. Artists were saying, "I don't want to be associated with a culture vulture. I don't want to give my credibility to a fraud."
To Atlanta when you need a few dollars. No, you're not a colleague, you a fucking colonizer.
You're not a colleague.
You a colonizer?
He called that a slave owner, bro.
Young artists who were coming up, who Drake used to be able to co-sign and boost, they didn't want his co-sign anymore, because being associated with Drake became a liability. It became a sign that you weren't authentic either. And you could see it in real time. Collaborations that were supposedly in the works got canceled. Artists who used to shout Drake out in interviews started calling him a colonizer. The industry turned on him because the culture had rejected him. Commercial partnerships started falling apart. Brands that had deals with Drake started realizing that his image was fake, and brands care about authenticity now. Consumers don't want to support frauds, so Drake's commercial value started dropping. His streaming performance showed the truth. Yeah, Drake was still getting millions of streams because he has 15 years of music and casual fans who hadn't fully understood yet. But the engagement dropped. The excitement dropped because people were starting to realize they had been played. Before Not Like Us, when Drake dropped a single, casual fans would get excited. But after Not Like Us, they started asking questions. Is this even really him? Did he write this? Is he stealing someone else's sound again? The doubt had been planted. Music critics who had been praising Drake for years started admitting they had been wrong. Publications started writing think pieces titled, "How We All Got Fooled by Drake, Why Real Hip-Hop Heads Were Right All Along." The critical reevaluation was brutal. And here's the most devastating part. His fan base started eroding. Not his core fans who still didn't understand hip-hop culture, they stayed loyal. But the casual fans who were learning about hip-hop culture through Not Like Us, they started moving on. The demographic analysis is brutal. Younger fans, Gen Z fans, who were being educated about hip-hop culture, they started seeing Drake as a fraud. They started gravitating toward authentic artists. Kendrick, Tyler, J. Cole, artists who were really part of the culture. Drake's cultural authority evaporated because it was never real. For years, Drake pretended to be the voice of the culture, but he was never part of the culture. He was an outsider looking in, and Not Like Us exposed that to everybody. Suddenly, Drake's opinions didn't matter. His cosigns were worthless because everybody knew he wasn't authentic. You can't be a cultural authority when you're not part of the culture. And the reputation destruction was complete. Not Like Us didn't just attack Drake's music, it exposed his entire persona as a lie. The authenticity questions that real hip-hop heads had been raising for 15 years finally reached the mainstream. Public perception polling showed a massive shift. Before Not Like Us, casual fans thought Drake was a hip-hop legend. After Not Like Us, they realized he was a fraud who had been appropriating culture for commercial success. Industry insiders started speaking freely. Producers who had worked with Drake started admitting he didn't write his own lyrics. Writers started getting credit. The whole machine that had protected Drake's fake image started breaking down. And here's something that's irreversible. His entire catalog got recontextualized as fraudulent. People started going back and listening to Drake's old music with new understanding. Lines that seemed cool before now seemed stolen. Flows that seemed innovative now seemed appropriated. Songs that were considered classics started being questioned. Started from the bottom, he was a child actor on a TV show. Worst behavior, he was never about that life.
You run to Atlanta when you need a check balance. Let me break it down for you. This the real nigga challenge.
He said this the real N-word challenge.
I heard of Josh.
You caught Future when you didn't see the club.
Songs that were considered classics started being questioned. Started from the bottom, he was a child actor on a TV show. Worst behavior, he was never about that life. Six God, he's not even from the streets. Every song, every bar, every claim Drake had ever made was exposed as a lie. This is the kind of damage that you can't recover from, because it's not about one song or one album, it's about your entire career being exposed as fraudulent. And that exposure was provided by Not Like Us. Now let's talk about the point of no return. This is the moment Drake's fraudulent career died. Not his bank account, not his streaming numbers, his cultural credibility. And the evidence is overwhelming. The cultural conversation in hip-hop shifted completely. Before Not Like Us, casual fans included Drake in conversations about the greatest rappers, but real hip-hop heads were always saying he doesn't belong in that conversation. After Not Like Us, even casual fans started understanding. They started realizing that commercial success doesn't equal cultural authenticity, that streaming numbers don't equal hip-hop credibility, that Drake had been faking it all along. The industry power dynamics changed dramatically. Drake used to be able to make or break careers by co-signing artists, but after Not Like Us, his co-sign became worthless because everybody knew he wasn't authentic. Real hip-hop artists didn't want Drake's co-sign anymore. It became a mark of shame. It became a sign that you were willing to work with a culture vulture for commercial success. Artists started refusing to work with him. And here's something crucial. The next generation of artists started viewing Drake as a cautionary tale. Young rappers who were coming up, who were going to be the future of hip-hop, they learned from Drake's exposure. They learned that you can't fake authenticity forever. This is devastating for legacy, because your legacy isn't just about what you did, it's about how the next generation views what you did. And Not Like Us taught the next generation that Drake was a fraud, that commercial success built on cultural appropriation is worthless. Critical reevaluation was brutal. Music journalists who had been praising Drake for 15 years started writing apologies. We were wrong. We should have listened to real hip-hop heads. Drake was never authentic. The critical consensus collapsed. Historical positioning changed completely. Before Not Like Us, casual fans put Drake in conversations with Jay-Z, with Nas, with the all-time greats. After Not Like Us, even they realized he didn't belong there. He belonged with other frauds who appropriated culture for commercial success. And here's the most important point. This damage can't be undone. Drake can't release an album that proves he's authentic. He can't drop a response track that changes the fact that he's been faking it for 15 years. Because Not Like Us didn't just win a beef, it exposed the truth. The recovery impossibility is real. Look at Drake's behavior after Not Like Us. Instead of responding musically like a real hip-hop artist would, he went the legal route. He filed petitions against Universal Music Group and Spotify. This is the move of someone who knows they've been exposed. When you're authentic, you don't need lawyers. You respond with music. You respond with culture. But Drake couldn't do that because he's not part of the culture. He never was. And Not Like Us made sure everybody knew it. His public appearances changed dramatically. Drake used to pretend to be everywhere, pretend to be part of every cultural moment. After Not Like Us, he became reclusive. He wasn't showing his face because he knew everybody could see he was a fraud. And when he did appear publicly, you could see the shame. The fake confidence was gone. He looked like someone who had been exposed, and the culture was celebrating. Finally, the fraud had been revealed. His industry participation decreased because he knew he wasn't welcome. Drake used to show up at hip-hop events pretending to be part of the culture, but after Not Like Us, he knew that real hip-hop heads would reject him, so he stayed away. Collaborative patterns changed because real artists didn't want to work with a fraud. Drake used to be able to get any artist he wanted, but after Not Like Us, authentic hip-hop artists started refusing. They didn't want to give their credibility to a culture vulture. The verdict is in. Not Like Us didn't just win a beef, it exposed a 15-year fraud. Drake fooled casual fans who didn't understand hip-hop culture, but Kendrick made sure everybody understood. And once they understood, they rejected Drake. Let's look at the timeline. 15 years of fraudulence. From 2009 to 2024, Drake pretended to be part of hip-hop culture. He appropriated regional sounds. He used ghostwriters. He faked authenticity. And real hip-hop heads were calling it out the whole time.